Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Mad Love Your Life show. I am really excited to bring you such a special guest today. She is a sister from another mister, and she's an empowered, strong, just fascinating human being. And we're going to have a lot of fun with her today. So, without further ado, meet my friend Judy. Judy is the founder of Wild Hearted Words, soon to be rebranded as Nice Tiger, a powerful branding and marketing agency dedicated to authenticity and impactful storytelling. Leading a predominantly woman of color team, Judy and her agency create visionary visibility for businesses, driving sales, enhancing lead engagement, and fostering thought leadership. In addition to her working in branding, Judy specializes in leadership and mindset coaching for women entrepreneurs of color, leveraging neuro-linguistic program to empower her clients. She is the author of The Little Book of Tibetan Rituals and The Little Book of Tibetan Rites and Rituals, published by Ulysses Press and distributed by Simon & Schuster. She recently launched a successful Kickstarter campaign for her upcoming book, How to Disappoint Your Parents in 10 Shameless Steps, a modern Asian American guide. As the host of the highly rated Fuck Saving Face podcast, Judy engages in real conversations about mental and emotional health, breaking taboos around diversity, equity, and inclusion for Asian Americans. A participant in the 2024 Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Businesses Program, a 2023 to 2024 Tory Burch Foundation Fellow. There's a lot of words. Her insights have been featured in Fast Company, NASDAQ, and Mind Body Green. Judy has also spoken at renowned organizations like the New York Public Library and Sharp Memorial Healthcare. So let's welcome Judy as she shares her expertise in branding, leadership, and breaking societal norms to empower individuals and communities. Woo! Such a great intro. Welcome to the show, Judy. I'm so excited to have you here today. And, I got to start with the first question. And the first question is, what do you know now that you wish you had known before you ever wrote your first book, walked into your first marketing agency to know everything that you're doing right now?
I think that you're enough. I think when you're raised as children of immigrants and, the tiger authoritarian parenting is all about you're not enough. You need to do better. You need to make sure you're excelling. And I think when those goalposts continue to get moved, you never feel like you're good enough. And I heard this amazing thing about imposter syndrome today that I had never heard before in this way. So as part of the Goldman Sachs program, we had a guest faculty come in, and this is a man who's like a top business strategy voice, John Whaley on LinkedIn. And he was sharing, unless you are actively lying to someone and you promise you're going to do something and then you go do something else, you are not an imposter. Being a business owner, going after your dreams, that involves risk. There are a lot of unknowns. And we are taught from a very young age, you're supposed to know everything. You better walk into this world knowing everything. And so we have this imposter syndrome from feeling like, well, we don't know everything. And that's just a normal state of things. It's a normal state of living. It's a normal state of building a business. And so if that's the case, you're not an imposter, you're doing the normal things. So reframing that in our minds, hearing that today, it just really opened things up for me. And I was like, oh, so I wish I had known that growing up, that you're enough and you're not pretending. I mean, sometimes, sure, we could stretch our skills and capabilities and maybe enter into rooms that we're not quite sure if we learned all of the tactical skills that we need yet, but that doesn't mean that we don't belong.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That's super rich. Yeah. I think that there's across the board that struggling with the am I enough and do I know enough are two big ones, especially as we do start to get into business for any of us in any kind of consulting work, because clients are looking to us to know the answers, right? And there's also beauty in being able to just speak up and go, actually, there's lots of things I know, but on this maybe one thing, I actually don't know. And so I'm sharing that with you. There is a president of a company I worked with once. He was one of the owners. And the thing that I loved most about him was he was super unassuming. And one of the things that he always did is when I was talking about something and he didn't know what I was talking about, he would literally stop me and go, hey, like, I don't know what that is. Can you explain that to me? And he did it in such a way that I just respected him more, because
Yes.
he didn't glaze over it
Yes.
as if I'm supposed to, like, as if he was supposed to know. Like, he was super humble about it. And I loved that. And it created this open dialogue in a way that just created a better relationship for us, obviously. But even more so, I was like, wow, he's actually stopping to say, I don't know, but I want to know, and fill me in. And how it was just powerful. It was just
So
powerful in its own
powerful.
way. And I was like, huh, it's so wild to me how not knowing can be as invigorating or as magnetic as someone who does know something. And there's just a beauty of the level of vulnerability to it was just
Mhm.
something that I just really respected. And I love that. I love that so much. What are some of the, I'm Asian American, you're Asian American. Woo, I tell people all the time, I said, it's such a conundrum for me growing up in this world, because I'm for sure American. I'm for sure, like, this is where I've spent elementary school on up. And I'm also very Thai. Like, we eat
Mm.
some super weird shit that's delicious. We just our family dynamics are so different, in ways that I appreciate, and also
Mhm.
in some ways that I just go, oh wow,
Mhm.
sometimes it gets really hard, right? So you're right. Being children of immigrants, I was trying to explain to someone the other day how, like, I had to like parent my parents, because my mom was first generation and she didn't speak great English. So
Right.
just explaining certain things to her, right? And I imagine, Judy, you had the same experience. So walk me through that, like, as an adult, when you look back on seeing, like, all the things you had to do as a kid to get where you are. Like, what are some of the things that you appreciate about that transaction? And then we're going to go into, like, the things that, like, you're like, no, that was like terrible information.
Yeah. I mean, now I have my own daughter too, and she's
Mm,
biracial. And I've really tried to encourage her to feel proud of her heritage
mm-hmm.
because growing up, my parents would say, you need to respect all the traditions and respect the elders and all that kind of stuff, while simultaneously telling us we needed to do whatever we could to fit in with the white people because
Mm,
that was survival. And so as I parent her now, I draw upon the things that I did appreciate growing up and then the things that I am working on healing intergenerationally. So she's not bringing that forward. And, if she chooses to have children one day. And
right.
so there's a lot of things that I think are wonderful. I think respecting your elders, having a cultural heritage that's really rich and that there's so much history and traditions and all of that. I lived in China and I lived in Taiwan as an adult and was able to see it from the external point of view, like the expat, but also having ties to these places and then
Yeah.
seeing what my parents must have gone through to emigrate to the United States and to not know the language, to,
Right.
like you said, not know how to read the things that you need your children to be able to interpret for you, to advocate for you. And like, if you don't have
Right.
the words in any situation, you can't advocate for yourself. Like, how are you going to do that with brute force? Like, so I
Right.
think that I now have a lot of compassion. It's one of the reasons I think it took me so long to write the book because I didn't want to write a book that's like slamming my parents and like throwing them under the bus. I didn't feel like that
Sure.
was fair. And the more that I dove into my own healing and neurolinguistic programming and re-shifting things and stories that I had, the more that I could see what it took for them and how their lives haven't been easy. And just being human is hard enough as it is. And being human in another country that like you don't know how to navigate and then you're raising
Right.
children who you feel responsible for and even bringing your siblings over or your parents over and having all of that. They're so and they went through their own trauma of fleeing communist China to go to Taiwan and then emigrating once more over. So and psychotherapy was not something that was talked about then.
Right.
It's not I feel like while it is imperative, I think some people still view it as a luxury. And I hope that
Mm,
ultimately the work that I do is to show you you can have all of these ridiculous things happen by your own volition or because of life and then
right.
still come through as the heroine or the hero of your journey.
Yeah.
And you don't have to throw away any parts of your identity to be who you want to be in the world now.
Right. Right. Yeah, that's so good. I think that's the other part of it is there are some there's something that happens where we create these identities and we start to live and die by them, or we start to realize like there can be a beautiful intersection, right?
Mhm.
Like you're a mom, but you don't,
Mhm.
and yes, you're a mom all the time, but you're also not necessarily in mommy mode
Yeah.
if you're, in a room speaking to a group of people
Mhm.
or training your team
Mhm.
on something, right? Then you are a CEO or you're a
Mhm.
coach or you're,
Mhm.
giving advice. So it's interesting to see how people get very, very attached to all the different identities. And a lot of times get really lost in one particular identity, forgetting that like we can be all things, right? It's almost
Mhm.
in the same way of mental health and awareness around, hey, we can feel sad and happy at the same time. And
Yes.
that's the crazy part about being human is like we get to shift and we can also experience two things at once.
Yeah.
It's not just I'm sad and I'm sad all the time. It's like, no, might be sad about X. If my mom isn't, my mom is sick, I'm sad, but I'm also happy that my, nieces and nephews are healthy, then I'm healthy,
Mhm.
that like we all look like we have a big life ahead of us, like it can
Mhm.
be all the things. And I think that part is where people get too lost, they get too lost in one feeling or identity, and they forget that there's more, like there's so much
Yeah,
more.
I think that as a storyteller, I pay attention to words. And I think for a lot of us, we think it feels safer in the black or the white or the either or the or instead of
Yeah.
the and like the place where everything
Yes.
like merges together. So let's sit
Mm.
in the and have that conversation. And I also remember, I forgot where I heard this from, whether it was like a podcast or something, but there's this experiment that people had done because some people find learning languages very difficult. But again,
Mm.
to your point of we attach ourselves to certain identities and certain stories and things like that, this one language learning center had said, when you come into this course, you're going to adopt a whole other identity, not your name, not who you are. We're going to make up a whole other person for you.
Mm.
So you are that person as you're learning this language. And because they got an opportunity to step into another identity, that identity could be whatever they wanted. And so that
Mm-hmm.
person was great at learning languages. And so because of that, their uptake of the language was so much easier. They had so much more retention. And it was because they put their identity aside and all of those stories that they had lived by and adopted another one. And so
Mm.
I thought that was so fascinating that we could do that in different aspects of our lives as well of, okay, well, I mean, even people have seen Beyonce, has had Sasha Fierce and like
Yeah.
acknowledging like sometimes we need that alter ego persona in order to step into parts of us that we want to have be more
Yes.
forward, but maybe we're just
Yes.
not quite ready for it yet.
Right. That's right. That's right. I love that so much. Yes. It's exactly why in acting, they have a methodology that is called, it was on the tip of my tongue and now I've just lost it. I don't know. Okay. Now I'm going to have to think about what it's called.
Uh-huh.
It's okay. I'm going to explain it. I can't remember what it's called, but I'm
Is
going
it
to explain
method
it.
acting?
It is method acting. It's where
Okay.
you thank you. That's why it's on the tip of my tongue. I'm actually saying it. I'm like, wait, what is it called? Yes, method acting methodology. Method acting is where if they need to play a homeless person, they actually go dress homeless, they go on the street, they start talking to homeless people, they start immersing themselves in what that
Mhm.
environment is. And so there's all these weird characters sometimes. Think about what's the new movie Joker, I think is
Oh
out,
yeah.
and
Mhm.
like how much that Joaquin Phoenix had to go in and like really get dark with himself or get dark to get into this role to play the part of this persona,
Mhm.
and how beautiful it is when all of us get to watch different actors and actresses play a part. They win, nominations and awards for making us feel like they
Mhm.
were there or they were that person or they embodied that character. And it's the same thing. We all have the ability to step into some method acting when we need
Mhm.
to in order to up level in a situation, uh, borrow some confidence that we don't have in the
Mhm.
situation, you name it. And I think that piece of it, that should be taught in school.
Yeah.
Honestly, every kid should have to go through, I don't know, drama class. And that should be a thing so that they can feel more
Yeah.
empowered and more insightful around what it is like to be something that they don't think they are, or they don't
Mm,
think that they're capable of being. Because that is where I feel like you can get a vision for and a feeling for, like, oh,
mm,
actually, I could get comfortable with feeling confident. I could get comfortable with, you
mm,
know, feeling like royalty,
mhm,
whatever the mode
mhm.
is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tell me about, so let's go to the other side. Like, what are some lessons that you've learned from your immigrant parents that you're like, I'm not going to do that as a mom? And have you been successful in not doing those things?
So the reason that my book is called How to Disappoint Your Parents in 10 Shameless Steps is because I've done the opposite of what a good Chinese girl should do. I was
Oh,
always too loud. I walked too loud. I talked too loud. My mom said I laughed too loud. Like everything was too loud about me. And then I failed out of math and I became an English major and I became a yoga teacher and all these things. I chose to get pregnant before I got married. I chose to get divorced. I go to therapy. I talk about all my problems. I don't save face. My podcast is called Fuck Saving Face because it's about
yeah.
let's break through all of these taboo topics. And I think Asian Americans have, and it's been studied, a very low utilization rate of mental and emotional health resources. There's so
Mm,
much shame and stigma attached to it. And
yeah.
because of that, we don't seek help unless it's like dire straits, or we just
Right.
don't. And then it becomes different problems within the family dynamic. It becomes anger, rage, physical abuse, alcohol abuse, like whatever it
Yeah.
is. And so I go through all of this because one of the things that I wanted to do is for my daughter to understand. I want you to do your best. I want you to fulfill the things that are socially responsible and bring you to life and all of that kind of stuff. But I'm not going to sit there and tell you you have to get straight A's, because why? I'd rather you learn the life skills that you need to
Mm,
know how to build healthy human relationships, to know how to exit relationships gracefully, and to not get to a place where you're sacrificing yourself for the good of others. And I want you to learn how to manage your money. I want you to learn how to take good care of your physical health. All of these things that I was just watching this video today about like how quickly technology is advancing, and we're training our kids
right.
now to have jobs we don't even know yet, to address
Mm,
problems we don't know yet,
mm,
and all of these things. So how do you prepare for a complete unknown because of how
right.
quickly technology is advancing? Well, at the end of the day, if I can teach you resilience and resourcefulness, asking the right questions, being able to build community, all of those things, you can figure out the answer along the way. So
Mm-hmm.
I think I wish those were skills that I was taught, because rote memorization to get perfect grades for what? Like
Right.
for what? Yeah, it might have afforded an opportunity to go to a better college and like all that kind of stuff. But I was so lost in college too. I didn't know who I was, what I was doing, you
Mm,
know. I had a severe eating disorder that I hadn't been addressed. And so there were all of these things that were preventing me from even fully being present in the situations that I work so hard to get to. And so
right.
I think that for all of the beauty of adventures and living a life, that you want to create, some of us are lucky and we get guided in that towards the direction that we want to move towards. Some of us have to figure it out on our own through hardship. And
Right.
so, I hope that ultimately we can just start to expand our awareness and our consciousness a little bit more, see it from a different perspective, and like have the conversations. I have conversations with my daughter all the time where I acknowledge, that I may not know something, but I'm curious, and how can we figure
Yeah.
this out together? I acknowledge when I'm wrong, I apologize, and so because of that, she's able to have really hard conversations with me that I could never have had with my parents. And
Mm-hmm.
so I'm not going to be perfect all the time. She's not going to be perfect all the time. But the one thing that I always tell her is like, it's about the coming back together. Can you make things right? Can you repair and rebuild? And like a muscle, that's how you strengthen. And so that's what I hope she takes away. That's what I hope we can all kind of move into, so that we can be healthier individuals. And when we're healthier, then any dynamic we're a part of is also healthier for it.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, that's beautiful. I feel like when I hear you saying this, it brings up for me how I definitely have two very different schools of, I would say, friend circles.
Mm.
I have one friend circle that is my entrepreneurs. A lot of them didn't come from any kind of like money or overly educational background, but they're super wealthy, super smart. They're great at what they do, and they're incredibly interesting people in the world. And they make such a difference in just in just a different way, in a different light. Then I have this other school of friends who are super educated, PhDs. They are super book smart and smart in the world as well. Not as interpersonally connected, I've noticed, because they've
Mhm.
been so busy in one side of their brain for a good portion of their life. They did get great grades. Many of them got scholarships in addition to having the money to pay for school. They go on with all this education, and then they come out of education and get into these really like high tech jobs, or they get into some actually great work that they do in the world, uh, usually working with a company at a very high level. So it's so fascinating to me to watch both circles, because one definitely values education, because
Mhm.
that was the path they took. They took education as a path and they got where they got. And they're like, yeah, but look, I have great things. I have stability. I have blah, blah, blah. And then I look at the other side and they're like, I took a risk, and my risks have gotten me to this great place where I have blah, blah, blah. And it's so fascinating to just look at it and go, oh, because we're just seeing it from our perspective of
Mhm.
what our experience was. And I'm a firm, theorist that the magic is actually somewhere in the middle. It's the
Mm.
middle of the ebb and flow of those things. And I hear what you're saying, Judy, because I agree with you. Like, as I think about, I don't have my own children, but I have nieces and nephews and kids that I influence. And when I think about them, I'm always thinking, how can I challenge them to think
Mm.
for themselves? Not, do you have to raise your hand every time you need to use the bathroom or that you have a question? It's like, no, like, your bladder's full. You know, you need to use the bathroom. Go use the bathroom. Like, no one needs to give you permission to do
Yeah.
what your body is made to do. So it's that ebb and flow of just being someone who can think for themselves, and also giving them
Mhm.
the right tools so that they can properly assess risk, properly
Mhm.
assess reward, and then make their own decision based on
Mhm.
how they feel. And like you said, not out of people pleasing, not out of needing to at the sacrifice of themselves for so many other people. And I'd love to talk to you about that, because I think that this is such a great subject when we're talking about what it is like when other people show up in our life that we do want to impress, or that we love, and we
Mhm.
want to nurture a relationship. Like, what are we talking about in terms of those lines of gray, right?
Mm.
Because like, yes, I want to make my mother happy. I love
Mhm.
her, I adore her, but not at the expense
Mhm.
of my own joy and adventure, right? So I want to go swim with sharks. I'm going. And I'll tell her about it. And she totally freaks out every time. She's like, oh my gosh, the ocean's so big and so are sharks. And I'm like, I know, but I feel safe. Like, I'm gonna do it. I don't think they're gonna eat me. They like white people more. And I'm only half. I'm too spicy for them. I'm Thai.
Oh, that's so
So like,
funny.
yeah, so for you, like, when you think about that, what shows up? Like, what is the right striking balance? Like, if you want
Mhm.
your child to keep her room clean, for example,
Mhm.
and she doesn't really care if the room is clean, but she knows you like it clean. So at
Mhm.
what point is her keeping the room clean love and respect, or is it she just isn't
Yeah.
feeling it today? Like, where's the
Yeah.
line, you know?
That's a really great question, because I do empower my daughter to use the word no.
Ooh,
And
okay.
so that's a good, I mean, sometimes she'll just say, I don't want to. But one of the things that I've told her is it's like natural consequences. Like, she'll be looking for something and she can't find it and she gets all frustrated. I was like, well,
Mm,
if you kept a tidier room, you would be able to find it. And then there's the other part of, okay, well, let's make an agreement. I like things tidier than you do. You have a space that we call your office. You can make that as messy as you want. That's your space. However, like, we agree upon a certain frequency, like, you're going to need to go in there and like tidy up. It's not going to have like mold growing in there or anything like that. But then that kind of like
right.
allows for us to both have space and have it
Hmm.
be. And then she does know that there are certain things that I prefer that like she doesn't really care about. And like, same, I have to learn the same thing. I have to learn to yield. I mean, I tell her we're sharing a home. And so because this is our shared home and there's different energies here and different like needs and wants, we need to respect one another's models of the world, essentially. Like that's what we
Mm,
call it in
yeah.
neurolinguistic programming. I think that the other thing is when at the core of what we do in NLP coaching, it is respecting someone else's model of the world. You may not agree with it, but you can respect it. And so my parents have a very different model of the world than I do. And we were
Mm,
doing this exercise in this NLP training where I was focused on career, like that was the topic. There's 6 key areas of life, and the one that I wanted to talk about was career. However, the greatest impact that it had was actually on my interpersonal relationships with my family, because I was able to see that a lot of the approach that my parents take to help protect me, or the way that they show care, is just not the way that I want to receive it. But
mm,
I was able to pull back and see like, okay, but that their ultimate thing is that they care, and that's just how they're
right.
showing it. So then I can
Right.
respect that, and because of that, I don't have to let it get to me so much anymore. Like it doesn't impact me the same way that it did. I mean, in this 15-minute exercise, like everything shifted, and I was able to
Mm,
truly appreciate, enjoy, and see them for who they are. They still do a lot of the similar things that I don't even like, it doesn't phase me anymore. I'm not like, oh, okay. And so I think that that is such a different way of approaching symbiosis and like, being able to be in relationships. And then
mm,
also, I think for me, I've always been the person who had to take care of everything. And I feel that there had been a chip on my shoulder for a long time about it. It's made
mm.
me strong, it's made me persevere in a lot of different areas of my life. But
Yeah.
I also feel like when I see someone else who didn't go through that hardship, sometimes it's tough. I want to say, like, my problems are bigger, like I had to go through
Mm,
more,
yeah.
which is just, we're all on a different journey. And so I
Yep.
think self awareness is so important. And like, where are you coming from when you're engaging with someone? Are you engaging from that wounded place? Are you engaging
Yeah.
from a place of wholeness?
Yeah.
I think that makes such a big difference in the results that we experience.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with that as well. Yeah, it's the comparison game is always dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
It never serves us in those instances.
Mm-hmm.
We can either stroke our ego really hard, or we can also just really damn ourselves in those moments,
Yes.
depending on which way we're on, which spectrum we're on.
Yeah.
And the beauty of being able to respect the journey. I've always said it's it's a joy to meet people where they are at, and also still speak hope and potential into
Mm.
a, a bigger vision, right?
Mhm.
So it's being able to, when you have that ability, you'll be able to literally talk to anybody,
Yeah.
and like with an openness, right? There
Yeah.
won't be this hard door. And look, as much as I don't want to have just a like how's the weather conversation, sometimes people are just at how's the weather, and it's like, okay, how can we start? We're going to start with how's the weather, and we're going to hope that we can get to something much deeper and more delightful. But it doesn't
Mhm.
always work out that way. And
Mhm.
also realizing that sometimes people need more time, they need more nurturing
Yes.
for
Yes.
trust, or they need more nurturing for just being curious about their own selves.
Yeah.
Sometimes people are kind of walking around in this robotic way, whether it's by conditioning or whether it's just by they love to live by a schedule and that's what they do, whether it's by uh, the fact that they're overwhelmed by life and
Mhm.
this is what they've got for today. And it's
Mhm.
so important, I think, for all of us to be able to look at someone and just recognize that we don't see everything that's happening under the surface. We don't see every conversation, and we can ask questions and hope for answers and some depth to those answers. But it's also just honoring where people are at in their journey. I think when I see my like a niece or a nephew struggle a little bit, and I'm like, oh, I know exactly what they need to do,
Mhm.
I'm also like, they didn't ask.
Yeah.
They're not asking me for my advice right now. They're not asking for my 2 cents. Like, let them have their experience.
That's
And so much of that,
hard.
right? Just not, yes, it's so hard. It's so hard.
Yeah.
And that's just the way some people learn. It doesn't matter what
Mhm.
you say,
Mhm.
or how good of an example you might be to them. They've got to go through their own experiences to
Mhm.
feel it in their own body and go,
Mhm.
oh. That's what they were
Mhm.
talking about.
Mhm.
And yeah, I get that. Oh, it is. It's hard to watch, Judy. How do we rectify that?
Yeah, I feel like everybody's on their own timeline. And I think that also one of the things that really helped me was understanding that forever, however many people there are on this planet, that's how many paths to enlightenment there are. And that's
Mm,
something that I learned when I was a yoga teacher. And I was also in the editorial field and interviewing a lot of spiritual luminaries and being able to understand, oh, so it's definitely not a one size fits all. And
mm,
this is part of your journey that, like
yeah.
has nothing to do with me.
Right.
And that's hard when
Yeah.
you care about someone too.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. What are, there's so many things on this topic, but let's go back to the book. Because I love the title first off, because there are lots of ways for us to disappoint our Asian parents.
Yeah.
Uh, I know I'm trying to think of my own. Like I would say one of my own was the my mom would always encourage education, but she also didn't come from an education
Mhm.
background. So I think that she couldn't properly like she knew the words like go to college, but there was no other like level
Yeah.
of support on what
Yeah.
that meant,
Totally.
And she actually told me how one day I came home with my grades and I was so excited to show her, that I got my quarterly grades or whatever and they were all A's or something. And she said, "You were so excited." She goes, "That I decided I was going to be excited, but I had no idea what you were showing me." And I'm like, "Thanks, mom." Glad to know that
Oh,
all these years later.
oh, that's funny.
So yeah, like I think that's one of them. I think for mine, my mom was always very concerned with our appearance. We
Mm-hmm.
always, she said, even if we're poor, we're never going to dress poor because she could
Mm,
sew. And so, oh man,
mm,
she sewed me beautiful clothes and they always fit
mm,
perfectly. Yeah, I
mm.
didn't know until I had to buy my own clothes that clothes don't come exactly made to fit me all the time. Yeah, that was very sad realization.
Oh.
Yeah, yeah, but that was a big deal to her,
Yeah.
and it's a big deal to wear a little bit of makeup,
Mhm,
and
mhm.
don't look like you're gonna look like a homeless person. Put a little blush and lipstick on. Oh, okay. And it's so funny to see like what is a value, what's
Yeah.
considered important,
Yeah.
and but these
Yeah.
are or her own things that she also grew up with and
Mhm.
were whether she inherited them or came up with them herself. I'm not sure.
Mhm.
What are
Yeah.
some of yours, or maybe share those with us in the book?
I think that ultimately, not becoming a doctor, lawyer, engineer, and still being able to build a company that I'm going to take my daughter to Spain for fall break. We're leaving on
Ooh.
Sunday,
Oh.
and being able to do things like that.
Yeah.
I think that I I feel like it's been interesting because the sample chapter that I give for people who back the Kickstarter and people who read different elements, while I do say it's a modern Asian American guide, it's really for anyone who's an outcast or a misfit or
Mm.
just tried to pursue the conventional path and couldn't do it. And I've had people from all different backgrounds reach out to me and say, I totally relate to what you're talking about. People who come from really religious backgrounds, people,
Mm.
anything where you've had to pave your path, and who hasn't disappointed your parents in any sort of fashion. And
Right.
I think that it's been wonderful to hear that it's such a universal thing and that we all have to go through this journey to figure out who we are. And some of us, like, our value systems are different. And so some people will always value what someone else thinks over what they want for themselves. And I'm not
Yeah.
sitting here trying to say my way is better. I mean, even my own family, people have asked me, are your parents still alive? Because are they going to read this book? Two,
Mm.
like, what about the other people who you mention in the book? What's that going to be like? And so everyone's going to have their own response to this. And they're probably not going to be in full agreement with me, and that's okay because this is my story.
Yeah.
Hopefully it leads to healthier conversations. I think that
Mhm.
growing up in Asian households, you're often conflict averse, especially if you've watched your parents argue a lot or whatnot. Like, you just don't want to deal with that. But I don't think conflict has to be a bad thing. It can lead to such wonderful discussions and growth opportunities. One of my
Yes.
friends is a therapist, and she says it always is a red flag to her if one of her clients comes and says they never argue with their partner. She's like, you're not the same person. How
Oh.
could you not have any sort of conflict? So, yeah, I think that that's
Oh.
really interesting.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, that is an interesting comment.
Hmm.
I like that. I like that. Ooh, that's spicy. I also think it's a little I mean, look, where does makeup sex fit in if you
Yeah,
never have a conflict? Isn't that supposed to be
exactly.
one of the best parts? Like, come
Exactly.
on.
Exactly.
I
Exactly.
mean, I might start a fight with my partner just to, you know, just saying, just to get there.
Oh, that's hilarious. That's hilarious.
So, Judy, tell me a little bit more. I heard you mention about what you're giving for the Kickstarter, but let's talk about that a little bit. What are
Mhm.
folks getting when they support the Kickstarter?
Yeah, so depending on the tier in which you support, you get everything from sneak peek chapters to an invitation to the VIP launch party here in San Diego. You can get your
Cool.
name and the acknowledgments of the book. You can get a
Okay.
coaching session with me. All of these different things, and every amount helps. I think it's just more of the rallying a collective movement
Yeah.
around this effort to amplify voices that are not heard and not seen. And so I think that that part is really important.
I think so too. I think so too. Amazing, amazing, amazing. Tell me what you foresee. Like, let's say the Kickstarter gets fully funded. You're, ready for next steps. What's that look like?
I want to be able to create a companion book full of exercises. I want the audiobook version out there. I want to be able to take it on tour. I want to be able, there's another client of mine who's a New York Times featured, LA Times featured writer, and she put on a one woman show. And so she's been
Ooh.
touring around the country. And I think, and it was about her mom being a manicurist, and that she actually went to go get a tummy tuck. It went awry. Her mom passed. And
Mm,
apparently, the person who did the surgery kind of targeted these Vietnamese refugees. And so it was a
wow.
whole vindication of her
Wow.
mom, of the malpractice. It was a whole thing, but
Mm,
ultimately finding your sense of wholeness and reparation and healing and all of these different things, like understanding your core values. So I loved hearing her story and how she was able to take that across the United States. And, so many people came out to support her because they also came from immigrant parents who, they felt seen and heard. And ultimately, I just
mm.
hope that I can rally communities everywhere where we truly feel seen and heard.
Yeah, agree. More people feeling seen and heard, I think, leads
Hmm.
to healthier communities and
Yes.
cultures and just relationships in general. And
Yes.
so important. I love that so much.
Yeah.
So there's a saying that we all have a superpower that we didn't know we couldn't appreciate until we were older. It was just kind of
Mm.
who we are. So if you look back and you think about who you were as a child, or who you've always been internally, what would you say is that superpower that you could look back now and go, wow, like I'm so glad I had that, did that, was like that, because now as an adult, like I can see like it really helps me.
Truth telling, which the adults
Oh,
around me did not want growing up. They did
oh.
not want reflected back to them
Mm,
the truth. And
mm,
now I do it every single day in my work with clients. It's all
hmm.
about helping you identify what's true for you, helping you understand what your personal brand is, helping you find your voice, helping you feel seen and heard. Like that's what I do for work. And so I'm
Yeah.
grateful. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so good. That's so good. Are there any well, of course there are. I was going to ask you, are there any times you've gotten in trouble, but of course being able to tell
Oh,
someone
yeah.
their truth,
The whole
especially their
book
brands
is me
is
being
a
in
big.
trouble.
Yes, I was going to say actually yes. I'm already answering that question for you. Absolutely it is, because that's
Yeah.
a pretty big
Yeah.
one. Yeah. Cuz
Yeah.
cuz it's also the fine line of sometimes that superpower is can be our
Mhm.
kryptonite in certain
Mhm.
situations, and part of
Mhm.
growing up is learning when to like bust it out and go full
Mhm.
force, and the other times is like,
Mhm.
you know what, I'm
Yep.
gonna just hold back just
Yep.
a little bit on this one. Yeah.
Discernment. Discernment.
Discernment, thank you. Yes, that's
Mhm.
exactly the word, discernment. No kidding. Amazing. Y'all, if you want to get in touch with Judy today, check out the show notes. You can also pop down into the comment section and you're going to see a way to get all of the goods. Judy, just for funsies, tell us the easiest way for people to connect with you.
Yeah, you can go to judytsuei.com, which, yes, it's TSUEI.com. I've spent my whole entire life spelling that out for people. And then you'll see everything that I have there, the podcast, the book, like the coaching, all of the personal branding work. And then I'm very active on LinkedIn under the same name.
Love that. Love that. All right, y'all. Well, there's the goods. That is today's show. I want to encourage you to also head over to maryd.com, grab the link to the YouTube channel, get more information about the Mad Love that's available for you. And until next time, may abundance always walk beside you. May joy always go before you. And may love always guide you on your path.